Ever think about, like, what you would do if you had to call 911?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not something you really want to dwell on, right?
Right. But, I bet you don't think about calling 911 because, like, your own daughter just orchestrated a hit on you and your spouse.
Yeah, that's definitely not in the top 10 911 scenarios I think about.
Yeah. So that's what we're looking at today. This is a deep dive on Jennifer Pan.
Yeah, Jennifer Pan, this case, it's really messed up.
Oh, yeah. It's really, really bad.
Hmm.
So, we've got a bunch of different sources for this one.
Yeah, we do.
So we're not just gonna rehash everything that happened.
No, 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 we're going way deeper than that.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get into, like, what was going on in her head and how it, like, escalated to this, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what leads someone to even conceive of such a thing, like to have their own parents murdered?
Yeah. That's the big question, isn't it?
It is, and we're going to try to unpack all of that,
Yeah.
looking at the events, the psychology, everything.
Yeah, and, I mean, how does a seemingly normal person end up, orchestrating something like this?
Exactly.
So the case took place in Markham, Ontario.
Right.
So Jennifer Pan, she was born in 1986 to Han and Bitch Pan.
Yep.
They were Vietnamese immigrants.
Right.
And really, classic immigrant story, came to Canada for a better life.
Yeah, exactly. Looking for opportunities, a chance to build a good life for themselves and their kids.
Yeah, Han, he was working as a tool and die maker.
Right.
Bitch was working at an auto parts manufacturer.
Right.
Not rolling in money, but doing okay.
Yeah.
Pretty typical middle-class family.
Yeah. Stable, solid, middle class.
Yeah, and they had huge hopes for Jennifer.
Yeah.
She was their eldest.
Of course. Yeah, that firstborn, you put so much hope and expectation on them.
Right, exactly. And I think a lot of our listeners can probably relate to this, right? The pressure to succeed, especially as a child of immigrants.
Oh, absolutely. It's a
Wow.
common thread in a lot of immigrant families, right? That drive to achieve, to prove yourself in this new land.
Right. So for Jennifer, it was all about becoming a doctor or a pharmacist.
Oh, that was the path they had laid out for her.
And from a young age, they really pushed her. She was taking piano lessons, she was in figure skating, and of course, like, super intense academic pressure.
Right. All those extracurriculars, it's that classic recipe for overachiever syndrome, isn't it? I mean, it's great to encourage your kids, but there's a fine line between encouragement and pressure, right?
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to see how that pressure might have played a role in everything that happened.
Yeah, that's a key question, isn't it? What happens when those expectations, those dreams, they clash with reality?
Right, because Jennifer, she was actually pretty bright in elementary school. Like, she was even in a gifted program.
Oh, wow. So it's not like she wasn't capable.
No, not at all. But when she got to high school, things started to change.
That transition to high school can be tough for a lot of kids, right?
Oh, for sure.
New environment, new pressures.
Yeah, and instead of, like, facing her struggles head on,
Oh.
she started down a really bad path.
What did she do?
She started forging her report cards.
Wow. So she was already living a lie back then.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine the stress of that, right? Like, constantly having to cover her tracks.
Oh, absolutely. And it's that slippery slope, right? One lie leads to another, and it just spirals out of control.
And that's exactly what happened with Jennifer.
Right.
So she didn't get the grades to graduate high school in 2004?
Oh, wow. So she didn't even have her diploma.
Nope. But of course, her parents didn't know that.
So what did she do?
She told them she got into Ryerson University for pharmacology.
Oh, my gosh. So the lies just kept getting bigger.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing, right? Yeah, like, for years, she pretended to go to classes.
Wow. That's dedication to deception right there.
Yeah, I mean, all that time she was working odd jobs.
Right.
And also secretly seeing her high school boyfriend, Daniel Wong.
Ah, Daniel Wong. Now, he's a pretty important character in all of this, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And, I mean, this is where things get even more complicated, right?
Okay, tell me more.
So Daniel, he was described as a small-time drug dealer.
Oh, wow. So not exactly who Han and Bitch had in mind for their daughter.
No, not at all. And they absolutely forbade her from seeing him.
Yeah, I bet they were furious when they found out about him.
Oh, yeah, they banned him from their house.
Wow. So you can see how the resentment was building here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer's feeling trapped, stuck in this double life.
Her parents are tightening the screws even more.
So flash forward to 2010. Jennifer's 24 years old at this point.
Okay.
Still living at home, still pretending to go to university.
Still with Daniel.
Yeah, and still harboring all this resentment toward her parents.
Right. So it's like this pressure cooker situation just waiting to explode.
And that's exactly what happened.
What was the trigger?
Her parents, they finally discovered the truth.
About her not going to university.
Yeah, they found out she had never even graduated high school.
Oh, wow. I bet they were devastated.
Yeah, and furious.
So what did they do?
They clamped down even harder. They took away her phone. They basically put her on house arrest.
Wow. Talk about a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. And of course, they told her to end things with Daniel.
Which probably had the opposite effect, right? I mean, when someone tells you you can't do something, it often just makes you want to do it even more.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this forbidden love
Yeah,
situation.
right.
And for Jennifer, this was like the final straw.
So she went running back to Daniel.
Yeah, even though they had actually broken up not long before this.
Oh, wow. So they were on again, off again.
Yeah, it seems like it.
So what happened when she went back to Daniel?
Well, they started talking about her parents and how much they hated them and how they controlled her life.
Oh, boy. I can see where this is going.
Yeah. And I mean, they were both desperate, right?
Yeah, desperate to break free from their situation.
And somewhere in all that anger and desperation, this truly horrible plan started to form.
They talked about killing her parents.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's a huge leap to go from, I hate my parents, to, I want them dead.
It is. But, I mean, think about it. She's been lying to them for years. She's resenting them more and more.
Right. She's feeling trapped.
And now she's lost the one thing that gave her some sense of freedom, her relationship with Daniel.
Right. So maybe in her mind, killing her parents was the only way to get her life back.
And there was another motive, too.
What was that?
Money.
Money.
Yeah, apparently she stood to inherit like $500,000 if her parents died.
Oh, wow. So a combination of freedom and financial gain.
Yeah, and, it hard to say for sure what was going on in Jennifer's head.
Right. But those seem to be the main motives.
So how did they actually go about planning this murder?
Well, Daniel, he had some connections to the criminal underworld.
Right.
So he reached out to a guy named Eric Carty.
Okay.
Carty was like a local thug, involved in some shady stuff.
Right.
And they agreed on a price, $10,000 to have Jennifer's parents killed.
$10,000 to have your own parents murdered. It's just chilling.
It is. It's like something out of a movie.
Right, but this was real life.
Yeah, and it was about to get even more real.
So Carty, he recruited two guys to carry out the hit.
Who were...
Lenford Crawford and David Melvaginam.
Okay.
And there was also a third guy involved, but he was never identified.
So 3 hitmen in total?
Yeah. And the night of the attack was November 8th, 2010,
Okay.
around
Yeah.
10 p.m.
And where were Jennifer's parents at this time?
They were at home.
Just relaxing at home. And
Yeah.
Jennifer was there too.
Yeah, she was.
What about her brother Felix?
Oh, he was away at university.
Okay, so just Han Bitch and Jennifer were at home.
Right.
And how did the hitmen get inside the house?
That's one of the really creepy details. Jennifer left the front door unlocked.
Oh, wow. So she was in on it from the start.
Yeah, she was complicit in this whole thing.
So they walk in the front door. What happens next?
Well, they confronted Han and Bitch,
Okay.
and they marched them down to the basement.
And Jennifer.
They tied her up upstairs.
Right.
And then they shot Han and Bitch.
Oh, my God.
But she was shot multiple times in the head.
Yeah.
She died instantly.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it's awful. And Han, he was shot in the face and the shoulder.
Did he survive?
Yeah, miraculously he did.
Mhm.
But he was in a coma for a while.
So Jennifer was upstairs tied up while all of this was happening.
Yeah, and right after the hitmen left, she called 911.
At like 10:13 p.m.?
Yeah.
So what did she tell the operator?
She was screaming and crying, saying that intruders had broken in and shot her parents.
And she stuck with that story when the police arrived.
Yeah. She told them that 3 masked men had broken in, demanded money, shot her parents, and then ran off.
So at first it seemed like a random home invasion gone wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
But then things started to unravel.
Yeah, the police, they started noticing some things that didn't add up.
Like what?
Well, first of all, there were no signs of forced entry.
Right, because Jennifer had left the door unlocked.
Exactly, and then there was the way she was tied up.
What about it?
It was really loose.
Like she could have easily gotten free.
Yeah, it was suspicious.
And didn't they also say nothing of value was taken?
Yeah, they didn't steal any jewelry or electronics or anything like that.
So the robbery motive just wasn't adding up.
Nope.
So what was the turning point in the investigation?
Han.
Han.
Yeah, remember he was in a coma after the shooting.
Right.
Well, when he woke up, he told the police something that completely blew the case wide open.
What did he say?
He said he saw Jennifer talking to one of the hitmen before the shooting.
Oh my God. And she wasn't tied up?
Nope. He said she was completely untied and she was talking to the guy casually.
So she was in on it the whole time.
Yeah, it was no longer a question of if she was involved. It was a question of why.
And that must have been a huge moment for the investigators, right? I mean, their whole focus shifted to Jennifer.
Yeah, they brought her in for another interview. This was on November 22nd, 2010.
Okay.
And they started grilling her and confronting her with the inconsistencies in her story
Yeah.
and with Han's statement.
And how did she react?
She finally broke down.
She confessed.
Yeah. She admitted to hiring the hitmen,
Wow.
but she said she didn't want them to rob her parents.
She wanted them dead.
Yeah, she said her plan all along was to have them killed.
And she implicated Daniel.
Yeah, she told the police everything about their plan, how they contacted Eric Carty, how they came up with the money.
Wow, it was all coming out.
Yeah, and the police, they were able to corroborate her confession.
How did they do that?
Well, they got phone records and witness statements, and they were able to trace the whole conspiracy back to Jennifer and Daniel.
So they had the evidence to prove she was behind it.
Oh yeah, they had a ton of evidence.
What was the most damning piece of evidence?
Well, aside from her confession and Han's statement,
Right.
I mean, there was a phone call that Jennifer made to Lenford Crawford's phone just a few hours before the attack.
Oh, wow. So they were in direct contact right before the hit.
Yeah, that pretty much sealed the deal.
Wow. So for our listeners out there, let this be a lesson. Don't underestimate the power of phone records.
Yeah, see?
But, I mean, it's more than just phone records, right? It's the fact that this young woman, this seemingly normal person, went to such extreme lengths to get what she wanted.
Yeah, she was willing to have her own parents murdered.
It's mind-boggling.
It is, and it really makes you think about the dark side of human nature.
Right, like what drives someone to do something so horrific?
So the trial started in 2014.
Okay.
Jennifer Pan-Hand, Daniel Wong, Lenford Crawford, and David Milvaginam. They were all charged with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy.
Wow, so they were all facing serious time.
Yeah, and Eric Carty, he ended up taking a plea deal and testifying against the others.
Oh, wow, so he turned on them.
Yeah, but sadly he died in 2018 in an unrelated incident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
It is.
So the trial went on for 10 months.
10 months? That's a long time.
Yeah, it was a huge case with a lot of evidence and witnesses.
So what was the prosecution's main argument?
Well, they focused on Jennifer's motive.
Right.
They argued that she was driven by years of resentment and a desire to be free from her parents' control.
Okay.
And they also pointed to the fact that she stood to inherit a lot of money if her parents died.
So freedom and money, those were the two big motives.
Yeah, and the prosecution, they did a really good job of presenting the evidence they had, you know, the phone records, Han's testimony, the lack of forced entry.
Right, it all pointed to premeditation.
Exactly.
And what about the defense? What was their strategy?
Well, Jennifer, she claimed that she only wanted to hire someone to kill herself.
Kill herself.
Yeah, she said she was suicidal and she wanted to end her own life.
But the plan somehow morphed into killing her parents.
Yeah, that's what she said. But the jury didn't buy it.
I can see why.
Yeah, I mean, the evidence against her was just too strong.
So what was the verdict?
Guilty.
Yeah. On all counts.
Yeah, all four of them were found guilty of first-degree murder for Bitch's death and attempted murder for Han's injuries.
And what was the sentence?
Life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years.
Wow, that's the mandatory sentence for first-degree murder in Canada, right?
Yeah, it is.
And how did Jennifer react when she heard the verdict?
She was surprisingly calm.
Oh.
Yeah, like totally emotionless.
That's really strange. I mean, you would expect some kind of reaction.
Right, but she just sat there stone-faced.
So what happened after the trial?
Well, Han, he was obviously devastated. I mean, he had lost his wife, and his daughter was responsible for it.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the pain he must have gone through.
He cut off all contact with Jennifer.
Understandably.
And he and Felix, they've been trying to rebuild their lives.
It's amazing that they were able to move forward after something so traumatic.
It is. And Jennifer, she's been in prison ever since.
Right.
She's kept a pretty low profile.
Yeah, I haven't heard much about her since the trial.
She did try to appeal her sentence in 2023.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she argued that her sentence was too harsh.
What was her reasoning?
She said she was young and immature at the time of the crime and that she was remorseful for what she had done.
But the appeal was denied.
Yeah, it was.
So she's still serving her life sentence.
Yeah, she is.
So this case, it really captured the public's imagination, didn't it? I mean, it's still talked about today.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those cases that people just can't forget.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's because it's so shocking and disturbing.
Right. I mean, it's the ultimate betrayal.
Yeah, your own child trying to have you killed.
It's like something out of a Greek tragedy.
Yeah, and I think it also raises a lot of questions about family dynamics and cultural expectations.
Right, because Jennifer's parents, They were immigrants and they had very high hopes for her.
Yeah, and there was a lot of pressure on her to succeed.
And that pressure, it seems like it played a role in what happened.
Yeah, it definitely contributed to her resentment and her desperation.
Right. And the case also sparked a lot of debate about the concept of filial piety.
Yeah, that's a really important aspect of this story.
Filial piety, it's that deep respect and obedience that children are expected to show their parents in many Asian cultures.
And Jennifer's actions, they were seen as a complete violation of that principle.
Yeah, it was a huge scandal within the Vietnamese community.
Yeah, I mean, her parents had sacrificed so much to give her a better life, and she repaid them by trying to have them murdered.
It's heartbreaking.
It is, and it really highlights the cultural complexities at play in this case.
Yeah, it's not just a simple case of a daughter killing her parents. There's so many other factors involved.
And the case, it actually became a Netflix documentary in 2024,
Oh, wow. What was it called?
What Jennifer Did.
Catchy title.
Yeah, and it's really well made. I mean, they have interviews with Han and with the detectives who worked on the case.
Wow, so you can really get a sense of what everyone went through.
Yeah, it's definitely worth watching.
So what do you think is the most important takeaway from this case?
Well, for me, it's the reminder that even seemingly normal people are capable of extraordinary acts of evil.
Yeah. I mean, Jennifer Pan, she was a bright young woman. She had a lot of potential.
Right, and yet she chose to go down this dark path.
It's a cautionary tale for sure.
Yeah, and it makes you really think about the destructive power of lies and resentment.
Absolutely. And for our listeners out there, I think it's also important to consider the role of communication in families. I mean, if Jennifer had felt like she could talk to her parents about her struggles, maybe things would have turned out differently.
That's a good point. I mean, it's important to create an environment where children feel safe to express their feelings, even if they're negative.
Exactly, because bottling things up can lead to all sorts of problems.
Yeah, and sometimes those problems can have truly tragic consequences.
So before we wrap up, I wanted to leave our listeners with a thought.
Okay.
We've talked about Jennifer's lies and her resentment, but think about this for a second. She was able to fool everyone for years.
Yeah, that's true.
She convinced her parents, her friends, everyone that she was a successful university student when in reality she wasn't even going to school.
Right.
So what does that tell us about her? About her ability to manipulate and deceive?
That's a good question. I mean, it suggests that she was incredibly cunning and resourceful.
Yeah, and maybe those qualities, they played a role in her decision to orchestrate this hit.
Yeah, I mean, she had to be pretty manipulative to pull something like this off.
So it makes you wonder what other dark secrets she might be hiding.
Chilling thought.
It is. And it just goes to show that sometimes the people we think we know best are the ones we know least.
So if you're interested in learning more about this case, I highly recommend checking out the Netflix documentary, What Jennifer Did.
Yeah, it's a fascinating and disturbing look at one of Canada's most infamous crimes.
And that's our deep dive on the Jennifer Pan case.
Until next time,
Stay safe out there.
and lock your doors.
Yeah, seriously.